Hello and welcome to That Thing I Did for a Year, a podcast where we interview fourth-year University of Toronto students about experiences they have in a year away from school. My name is Ilya. I'm a fourth-year industrial engineering student here, and I'll be talking to Jenn today. Behind production is Arkadiy Hungarovsky, a fourth-year engineering science student and the mastermind behind the operation. So today we're going to be talking to Jenn. Jenn, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Jennifer Dixon. I'm in my fourth year of materials engineering, and I just got off of PUI.
Sweet. So we'll get into the PUI portion of it, but you're in MSE, or Material Science Engineering. Not a lot of people are in that. How did you end up choosing that coming out of high school?
Well, I realized that I was really interested in chemistry. I did the AP program, so I did AP Chemistry, AP Physics, and that was what I wanted to go into. Mm-hmm. I had a strong drama background, and I was good at literature and stuff, but I really wanted to do something technical. And then I heard about this thing called nanomaterials or nanotechnology, and I thought, let me try that. That sounds cool. So I looked at a lot of programs, and I was more choosing, I want to go to Canada, first of all, and then I said, okay, what's the best in Canada for engineering? And U of T is what they got me, and I was looking at the programs, and I thought Eng-Sci was cool, but it looked really hard. And then materials engineering struck me as really interesting because it combined my interest of chemistry and physics pretty well. And based off of the fourth year courses that were available, I thought those were really sexy and interesting. So that's why I chose it. And it's a small program. It's there are 50 people in my program and we all kind of know each other.
Right. Do you like that?
There's good and bads, I'd say. I do kind of like that. My high school was a class of 50, so it's not much of a change. Mm-hmm. But I think moving forward, I would like a bigger class.
Right. You mentioned that you were looking for something in Canada. Where were you applying from? Where'd you go to high school?
Oh, I went to high school in this little country called Oman. It's in the Middle East. So it's kind of like the Switzerland of the Middle East. Nobody really hears about it. Nothing much going on there. But yeah, I went to an American international school there. And very unique experience. A lot of people don't realize I'm not a local student. I kind of blend in with the crowd. But yeah, I learned a lot about different countries while I was there, and I learned about Canada, and I really liked all the Canadians I ever met, and I wanted to come to Canada because I couldn't really stay there. I needed to find somewhere else to be.
Right, and our brand was strong.
Pardon?
Our brand was strong.
Yeah, the Canadian brand is real strong, especially on the internet.
Okay, gotcha. Good to know we're strong and dank. So, so you got here, you started doing MSE, and leading into PY. What did you get up to over the first, say, 3 years of your time at university? What did you do that interested you?
Well, honestly, I didn't really have a big plan when I got here. Mm-hmm. My parents didn't go to university. I was the first one. So I was just happy to be here.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'll just play it by ear, follow my gut. So I started writing for the TOEIC, which was fun. Mm-hmm. But mostly I was focused on just staying in school because I found the switch from high school to university just really big. I was not used to this level of rigor and the way that the courses were structured. So I was kind of just survive, Yeah. I was interested in the TOEIC, obviously, and then I also did a bit of Conquer Canoe. Nothing much. Oh, and Materials Industry Club, so I did some professional stuff as well.
Oh, okay.
But apart from that, I was just sort of doing my own thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're doing your own thing, leads into third year. How were you thinking about PUI, or why did you decide to do it?
Well, there are a number of reasons why I wanted to do PUI. One of them was that I really needed a break from school. Mm-hmm. I always had it in my mind anyway that I would do PUI because even when I was applying to universities in high school, I thought, I don't know if I want to do 4 straight years of school. I kind of want to do some work on the side. And I thought internships sound fun. They really put you out of your comfort zone, but in a safe way. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to do that regardless. And I always heard about great experiences from people off of PUI, and I wanted a slice of that. Good thing too, because like by the time I got to the end of third year, I was so done. Like I was so burnt out, and even if I didn't have a PEY or I didn't have anything lined up, I would probably take a year off anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking about that, like, what do you think led to like that level of burnout or that feeling of I need a break?
There's a lot of things. So firstly, I think the third year materials curriculum just gave you a lot of work for not a lot of good reason. Good thing they're kind of changing it up now. I hope it's a little bit different. But yeah, it was a lot of work in third year. I would like to say that applying to jobs was a lot of work, but I don't think that's true for me. I didn't really apply to that many jobs. It was 3 years of constantly being told you're not good enough. I definitely always felt that insecurity of like, maybe I'm not good enough to be here. And having 3 years of that it can really take a toll on you. So I think a break was definitely necessary. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned that you didn't spend that much time applying to jobs, or you didn't apply to that many. What was your approach to applying to jobs?
So I basically just looked on the portal. Okay, so I have sort of two approaches. At the time, I was really interested in forensic engineering.
Okay.
And because of that, I actually overloaded a course onto the second semester of third year to figure out if I really wanted to do that. It's like a forensic engineering course. But yeah,
What is forensic engineering? Just so people kind of get an idea.
Oh, right. Okay. So forensic engineering. So everyone, when you think of forensic engineering, you're thinking about crime scenes and bloodstains and DNA samples and hairs, right? Sure, that's forensic science, as you probably heard of. But there's also forensic engineering where, say, so a couple of years ago in Toronto, you had panes of glass falling from the sky, falling from condos. And people are like, why is this glass falling off of my condo? This is like a 3-year-old condo building. A forensic engineer is hired and tasked to look into the issue. They're trying to figure out, why did this glass break? How did it break? This is where, say, a materials science and engineering degree might come in handy, where you can say, well, based on this fracture pattern, it looks like there is some silicon, there's some things in this glass that was done in the manufacturing process that let it fail. So a forensic engineer will go in there, use their expertise, use their research, their literature, and make a judgment as to, at least from a physical level, what went wrong. Then they hand it over to, say, insurance or a judge or something, and they can say, hey, this is what happened, and the physical evidence doesn't really tell a lie, right?
So that just sounds like some straight up Sherlock Holmes shit.
Yeah, really cool. I mean, something about investigating stuff and like being like, with the little like glass thing, and they're like, oh, cool. And you're like solving a mystery. That really excites me. Yeah.
Okay. So you were considering that, like, to the point where you took a course in it. What was the other kind of field you were considering?
So anything else.
Okay.
So let me try and pursue this forensic engineering thing. For those who don't know, forensic engineering is a pretty small industry, and a lot of the ways you get into it is not through some large PEY portal, but rather who you know, or any companies that have maybe one opening. So that's one route, and it's kind of a luck thing, especially if you're
not entirely in your control.
Yeah, it's not always in your control, and it depends on what's out there. So then I applied through the portal, and I said to myself, hey, don't freak out. There's going to be some things you may not be qualified to do. There's going to be some things that you might not be good enough for, but there's going to be some things that you are. And just apply to things that you're interested in, because there's no other opportunity you're going to get where you're just like willy-nilly applying to like whatever seems interesting. You're probably going to be worried about getting a full-time job to pay for your rent otherwise. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you go about looking for both these classes of jobs? So for like forensic engineering and then for everything else?
I'd like to say I have a strategy, but I really didn't.
What ended up happening, I guess?
Well, what ended up happening was that, 10 o'clock on a Friday when the applications close, I say to myself, Jen, that thing you were looking at, earlier this week, just apply to it. If it's still in your brain by this time, you should probably just apply for interest. So I would apply to jobs, late at night, just try not to spend too much time on the application. And I only applied to jobs that I thought were interesting. And at the time I had the luxury because it was first semester.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that is the best strategy for, say, second semester or the summer when you're also applying.
Okay. But like early on, you felt like you might as well go for the stuff that you found really interesting. And if that didn't work out, then later on you could go for some stuff that might not be as interesting, but something where you could still take a year off school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And stuff that was interesting that, maybe you might not be able to get into, but you just wanted to go for the interviews. Mm-hmm.
So I guess here we get to the point, where did you end up working?
So I ended up working at Synaptive Medical. It's a medical device company. They used to say startup, but it's been around for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. It's in downtown Toronto. And I worked as a manufacturing quality assurance engineering intern.
Okay. That's quite the title.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I got there, the title got smaller. So.
But they really sold you with the lots of words.
Yeah, lots of words. As long as engineering interns in there somewhere,
How did your process with Synaptive look?
It was actually really straightforward. So I just applied, and then I didn't hear anything back for a while. When I was applying, I just Googled them and I said, wow, they look cool. They look interesting. Who knows what they're going to be doing? Mm-hmm. So I applied. I told them why I was interested in the medical device field. And then like a month and something later, they said, hey, come for an interview this week. And then I signed up, went for the interview. And then they were like, cool. Hear back from you later. And then, you know how in first semester, I don't know if it's still the case now, but like all the offers come out on like the same day in like December. Mm-hmm. And then I got the offer then.
Okay. Was it an easy decision to say yes?
Well, yeah, 'cause I didn't have any other offers.
Okay, so an easy decision. What do you think spoke positively for you to get that job?
So I talked to my colleagues later on about this. I said, oh, what do you think of the interviews? Because, I was interviewing for the next round of interns, and I was talking to like my fellow coworkers like, hey, what do you think is good? And I was kind of like hinting, can you tell me, what stood out about me?
Right. What's going to be on the test?
The only thing I got out of them was my enthusiasm. Uh-huh. So I'm not from, say, industrial engineering where you take like one quality course in like third year or something and you can say, oh, I know something about quality. I come from materials engineering, which is a lot.
Being industrial engineering, I'm chuckling right now, but go on.
Okay, well, I assume you guys do some quality engineering or something.
We'd like you to continue assuming that, yeah.
Are you continuously improving your course?
I would hope so. I would think so. But you were saying you're from materials science engineering.
Yeah, so I'm from materials science engineering, so I don't really have a lot to like bring over. In fact, the only thing I could bring over was forensic engineering, which is kind of funny because, so I interviewed and I was just really enthusiastic about the job and quality or just like learning new things and the medical device industry. And that came across in the interview. So, yeah.
Okay. And you got that job, so you weren't really like thinking about jobs throughout second semester.
No, which was, such a relief.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned you were overloading another course with forensic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you finished second semester. When did you start working?
So I finished second semester on like the last day of exams, which was like a Friday. And then I was there at work on the Monday morning.
Actually 2 days.
Yeah,
between.
It was like a quick vacation.
We like to call it a weekend. So how did that jive with this feeling that you said you had of burnout? How did you get yourself to start in on this new job with your core quality of enthusiasm, despite feeling burnt out?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was certainly feeling burnt out. I Googled it. I was like, why am I so tired? Or like, is burnout, that was the first thing that really stuck out to me. Is like, I was tired all the time. Like, even as I was like typing my final projects, I was like, I can't keep my eyes open. Just give me more coffee. Oh wait, the coffee's not helping. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I was definitely burnt out. And that weekend, I remember feeling like in such a daze. Like I didn't know what was going on. And then I came in on the Monday, still in a daze, not sure what was happening. But I just sort of took it one day at a time. And honestly, in the first week, your coworkers are kind of saying like, hey, just chill out. Like this is the experience at Synaptive at least. Just chill out, like read the safety documents or whatever, or like read your SOPs. And then just, talk about it at the end of the day and go home. And I was like so relieved. Like, I'm like, I don't have to do anything. Like, I just got to read. I could read all day. So it was a bit relaxing to go go into work. Luckily, I didn't have any huge projects just waiting for me once I got there. So it was an all right. It was a good phase out of burnout.
Okay, gotcha. So and you felt like you had time to kind of start recovering as work picked up.
Yes, and I think that was very much dependent on the fact that I didn't have anything waiting for me when I got there. It was I just had to focus on doing my training, and that's about it.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, let's get into what that training and what your job looks like. What does a manufacturing and quality engineering intern do? Did I get that right?
Yeah, manufacturing quality co-op engineering intern. They have a lot of Waterloo co-ops there, so they kind of misname, like they put co-op in your title, and you're like, excuse me, I'm a PUI.
Snapping fingers.
Snap fingers.
Yeah.
There were a couple things I worked on. One of the big things in manufacturing quality. If you've Sam from the previous podcast.
Sure, Sam.
She and I had similar responsibilities. I took care of calibration of tools in the manufacturing side. So I would manage the tool calibration program. One of the requirements in medical device regulation is that you have to have calibrated equipment, or if you need calibrated equipment, the equipment should be calibrated. So I was managing that program. In addition, I was helping out with various manufacturing improvement tasks. So you would look at, what are the different steps involved in manufacturing this medical device? And is there any way you can make it more efficient? Another big thing was NCRs, or non-conforming material reports. So whenever there is something non-conforming, for those who don't know, it's really, really important that whatever you make conforms to the design you send to FDA, because if it doesn't, then you have potentially a very dangerous medical device. So it's really, really important to flag things that are non-conforming, and make sure you investigate them.
It sounds like, especially given what Synaptive does, which as a recap, and tell me if I miss anything, is just they're making actual robot arms that are digging around inside of people.
The robots themselves are not digging around, but they're certainly a very big participant. So basically, they're helping the surgeon look at what they're digging into, which can have a very big effect on the surgery as a whole. So
it's got to be very, very finely tuned.
Yeah. So it's really, really important to have a good build quality.
So you're going into this job that does actually sound more like an indie job, with the focus on quality and conforming to a specific standard, without a specific background in that. How was that for you?
Oh, it was certainly a learning curve, but I was so excited to learn something apart from, say, nanocrystalline stuff. It was a nice change. And what I realized about quality engineering is that I think I've always had a good eye for quality.
Sure.
I've always been do I really know this, or do I really know this is good, or how can I improve this? And I actually discovered that it's something that I was really interested in. So it was definitely a learning curve, and I would be constantly asking my coworkers what does this mean? And why is this important? I was nonstop asking people about things and Googling stuff. But eventually you pick up the vernacular, I think was a big one. So using the right terminology. Any company that you work at will have some sort of tribal list of words that they like to use. Right. That can be as simple as project management words, what's on fire right now, or what is the key issue, or they'll use certain words for that. But there's also terms in quality that's really important. So things like this is a higher risk ticket item, or this is intolerable in terms of risk. So really, I think learning the words first for how to describe situations in quality is just the beginning, and I was really excited to learn all these new things.
Okay. You mentioned that you did both a lot of Googling and a lot of bothering your teammates.
Yeah.
Was that something that you were nervous about initially? Just I know personally, when I was starting at a new job, I would always kind of approach with trepidation this idea of bothering somebody because I didn't want to be annoying. How did you strike that balance?
Oh, I was so nervous about it at first, but one thing that's really great about Synaptive is that they really, really push you to make do one-on-ones, which I didn't know what that meant at first. It means grab coffee with someone. It just means you talk to them.
That's the business word for a conversation.
Yeah, a conversation. A conversation. They really, really push you to have one-on-ones with your coworkers or anybody around you, or even anybody in top management is okay. To make sure you're all on the same page, or explore new career paths and stuff like that. So I had a lot of one-on-ones, and this was with my manager, with my coworkers. I also asked them about their previous work experience. I think when I was approaching people about the different things I was working on, I was really conscious about being vulnerable in front of them. Because if you show like you're really interested in something, but you need help and you're vulnerable about it, they're more willing to sort of help you, right? I don't ever want to go up to someone and pretend I know what I'm talking about and then actually show that, because obviously I don't know what I'm talking about, then show that, and then, you know, it doesn't feel very genuine when you have that close relationship with a coworker. I think it's very important to show like, hey, I'm willing to learn. I don't know everything, but please help me.
Okay, gotcha. When did you feel like you started transitioning from this like constant frenetic state of like Googling and asking people questions into, oh, I feel like I can really do my job?
Oh, that was like, it's like 5 months. Yeah, I mean, it would really suck if you only had like a 4-month co-op in, say, quality, because you really have a lot to learn. Like, you don't learn quality in university. So I really only started getting that competence in like 5 months in. So I'm talking about like August, September, October time.
And you started in May?
Pardon?
And you started in May?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Was there like a specific moment where you felt that, or were you just like realizing it over time?
There were a couple like moments that stood out to me. Like it was, you know, simple things like you talk to a coworker, you go into that quality mode of being like, say, so in quality, particularly if you're talking about quality systems, or you're talking about figuring out how to, say for example, you're approaching a coworker and you want to look at a process like, say, the NCR process, where, you know, a lot of people are involved in signing off on things, and you talk to them about how to make
what does NCR stand for?
Non-conforming material report process.
Gotcha.
So you're like, hey man, these reports, they're not going through fast enough. Like, what's holding up on your side? So you're trying to engineer the system a bit so you can get these reports through. When you go up to them and you're like asking them, oh, what's pending on your thing? Or like, what do you need to assess here? When you go through those conversations and you sit down with, you know, people who are, you know, experts in their field. So you're talking to, say, a manufacturing engineer, and you can actually be that quality consultant, that quality systems expert, and help them figure out what they need to do, and have that conversation and not feel like a university student. That felt so powerful. Like, I was doing my job like I should, you know?
Right.
Like, and I never at one point felt like I was incompetent to do it. I was just asking all the right questions, and I knew which questions to ask.
That sounds like an awesome feeling.
It is an awesome feeling. And then you walk back and you're like, yes, yes, I just advocated for quality. Yes.
I'm an engineer. So you mentioned you started feeling that way around like 5-6 months, and you were there for 14 months. What was the transformation? Like, how did you feel like you changed from that point where you started feeling like I'm an advocate for quality, like through the end of your internship? Like, what was the latter part of the progress like?
Oh man, it's hard for me to answer that question, just because my time at Synaptive was such a roller coaster.
What made it a roller coaster?
So one thing that we were working on was the MDSAP switchover. So MDSAP, for those who don't know, if you're not in the medical device industry, is the Medical Device Single Audit Program. It's really important that medical device companies are audited, you know, say annually or whenever they need to. They get audited for their quality system, and making sure they're, you know, following the regulations, because it's a regulated industry. And our audit was coming up in, I think it was like February. And it was a big one, because we weren't just checking that we were doing what we were doing before. We were checking that we have done things more so than before, and upgrading to this new standard, this new baseline of quality. And MDSAP, it is a new program because it's like a harmonized thing. So typically you kind of like get the Canadian people in here like, oh yeah, you can sell things in Canada, it's okay, right? Or you get, say you want to go to Brazil, the Brazilians will come over and like, oh, I'm kind of making this like super simple. It's actually like various different third parties that do this. But the single audit program combines like 5 different countries' regulations into one, and also like the ISO standard for medical device quality.
Right.
So it's a lot of different things. It's a lot of auditing, so you have to read all these regulations, and you're like, do we do these things? Does anybody know? And you have to read all of your regulations and all your SOPs.
You sound like half lawyer, half engineer.
Well, turns out all of my experience in AP literature is coming in handy.
It's like beyond literacy, just being able to look at many pages and saying, yeah, I'm going to crunch that now.
Oh yeah, it was so many pages, especially because like we had a very young team and our auditor on the team was like really enthusiastic. So he would actually break down all the regulations like sentence by sentence or like clause by clause. And you're like going mad because you're taking like 100-page document and breaking it into like so many more pages. And you're like, well, we'll get through this eventually.
But it sounds like you didn't quite have eventually because there was a specific deadline for this audit that you needed to get to.
Oh yeah, that's when it gets tough, right? And I loved this so much about it because it was like, we can't do everything, so let's do what's most important first. So you got to risk rank everything, and it's like you got to risk rank it based on like severity to the company or severity on the products. Like, is it going to make a non-conforming product, which is always the thing you don't want. Is it how important is it at this time? So you really got to be strategic about what regulations you want to like look into. You're supposed to go through all of them, and it was crazy because I really got to work on some really important stuff, really important compliance stuff. And those are things I get to take with me to interviews at other medical device companies and say like, hey, I have some competency implementing this regulation to this new audit program that is very recent that your company needs to go through as well. Right.
And that sounds like crisis mode experience that is hard to interview for outside of the direct experience.
Yeah. It was so crazy because we had so many different changes in the company that were going on. We had a couple like, scary, like, oh no, are they going to come audit earlier than we thought?
Right.
And things like that. So it was certainly a roller coaster. And once we actually got up to the audit day, so like I have like in high school, I did a lot of like theater shows and plays and you have like a script and like you think what things are going to be like on the day.
Sure.
But it turns out on the day of the audit, you never know what's going to happen, what they're going to ask. And you have to like think fast and act quick and show them what they need to see. And of course, like explain to them how you're compliant and things like that. And I've actually never experienced something so similar to performance in like my past 4 years here. And it was really great.
It sounds like everything kind of came back and came together.
Yeah, it really did come together for me during this experience. There were a lot of things I forgot about myself because, not everything you do in school is going to be about you. Like there's other parts of you as well. Yeah.
Like, was work kind of like a catalyst for like a rediscovery of these parts of your identity?
Oh, definitely. I remember thinking, a couple months into my PEY, like that I could actually breathe again. Like I could actually think about who I was before I came to university. Because, when you come to university, you're bombarded with all this new information of like, oh, join this club, or like, oh, you should be doing this, or like, no, you should definitely be getting a grade higher than like a 65 on this test.
Like a ton of external pressures.
Yeah, there's so many external pressures. You've got all of your peers telling you how great they are. It's like, or like, then, yeah, there's all sorts of different external pressures. And it was nice to just be respected and be yourself. And people, guess what, in the workplace, they don't value grades in the workplace. Right. You know what they value? You getting your work done. And it was really nice to be able to do good work, get feedback, and people were like, oh, okay, cool, moving on.
And it feels like you have much more of a grasp on whether or not something was good. It's not like, well, this might be good. Let's see what this abstract person or system thinks about
it. Exactly. And the target's always moving in industry, right? Of like what people think is right. Whereas I feel like in university, there's only one thing that tells you whether it's right or not, and that's the TA who's marking your question, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, like kind of coming back into your identity as somebody who does good work, and also like more getting in touch with like not the art side, but more like the communication side of yourself, like both in terms of literature and in terms of like the performance. Were there any other parts of yourself that you kind of felt like you like, discovered or rediscovered over the course of PY?
I think a big thing that I discovered was how I rank my priorities, my personal priorities. So I realized family was really important to me. I hadn't seen my family in like in person in like 3 years.
Wow.
So I definitely rediscovered that, family is really important to me. Relationships with my friends are really important to me. Making sure that I have good connections in Toronto, like just friends or family relationships, it's super important to me. And I would definitely prioritize that over like any job or any grade. So that's why I decided to fly to Malaysia to go visit my family.
Wow. Okay. When did that happen?
Oh, it was like at the end of PUI. So I had just finished my job, and then I took a month to just clean my room or like throw out stuff, do the mental cleaning, the spring cleaning that you need to do after, 4 years of school.
Yeah.
And 3 years of school.
Yeah.
And then I went to Malaysia to go visit my parents. Yeah.
How was that?
I would like to say it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But really, it was tough. Like, it's really tough when you don't visit your family and then you feel a bit disconnected after a while. I do call my parents every weekend, but there's a lot of things that you don't quite get from like a little call like a 1 hour call every weekend. So it was tough because I had grown up a lot and they'd also grown older. And we were also on vacation together, so we want to do different things.
Right.
Whereas my mom wants to be at home, I want to be outside.
Right. It's funny when you think about vacation, you think it's like an easy time to be around each other, but like it's really not. You make more decisions, don't you? There's I guess like something that I'm finding interesting in talking to you here is that a lot of people think about school as the time when you're like closest with your friends because you're around them all the time, and it's like so much easier to value friends during school. But what was it about being on PUI that made you realize how high relationships rank like in your order of priorities?
I completely disagree in that like you are really close to your friends while you're in school. I think that's a misconception based on what we've seen in movies. Okay. It is true that you are close with people when you're in tough situations. So say you have a project you need to do or a midterm and you have all decided to study together. I think it makes sense that you're close to those friends, or say you're, constructing something in the pit, right? That makes sense. I personally don't feel very close to people in school a lot of the times because everyone is so focused on, getting those grades or getting those midterms. This may be just a function of being in a small class. But when I was on PUI, I was so relieved that I could just, leave work at work and then just like text a friend and say, hey, you want to grab drinks? Or like, hey, there's this movie. Can we go see it? And you can actually do things that you really enjoy and not worry about, is this too expensive? Or do I have time to study for my midterm? It felt really like a relief that I could just enjoy my friends' company and that alone. You felt like you also didn't have as much like hanging over your head, it sounds like. Yeah. Huh. That's really interesting that you mentioned that that's like a misconception that's coming from movies, kind of like that's hanging out with your multicultural group of friends on a lawn. Like, yeah, I definitely think it's a misconception that school like brings people together. I think it's like you get a lot of competition at the school, I feel. Right. And what was really great about PUI is that I got to be friends with people that were not in my class, that were from other schools, maybe not even in school. Like I got to have adult friends, like people with jobs. I got to just meet a ton of new people and understand like there's a lot of different perspectives out there. And one of my favorite things is to like sit down with someone and completely disagree with them, but I really want to like hear their perspective on something. Right. Yeah. In terms of like meeting new people, that sounds like something that would have been inherently afforded to you just by being an international student, right? Like coming here, you have less of the same, like compared to somebody like me, for example, who went to high school and like elementary school in and around Toronto. Did you find that there was something like fundamentally different about working with people like and meeting them versus like meeting them at school? No, I don't think. Like, I think meeting people at work, you give a lot more distance and you give a lot more, like you kind of know less about them. Sure. In a sense. So you really do have to make an effort. Meeting people at school, I mean, you can sit next to someone, you already have a lot of things in common. I'd say it's certainly different. Okay. I think for me, it's less of a challenge to meet people in school. But I feel like you're not going to meet as a diverse crowd, I feel, when you meet people in school. Right. Which is interesting because like, you think about U of T as like a place where people come from all over the world. But in terms of diversity of like goals or diversity of like, ideas, we're all kind of after like very similar stuff. Or a lot of us are after very similar stuff while we're in school. Yeah, of course. I mean, when you do come to a university or even when you join a company, there's going to be a certain amount of you must conform, right? That starts with academics, but then there's also conformance of culture.
That makes sense. So were there any like barriers or any like differences that you had to overcome when like working or looking for work as an international student?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're an international student, you don't have as many liberties as some of the domestic kids.
Okay.
Like, for example, like I've always been doing paperwork with the government. Like I have to do like a work permit, a co-op permit and stuff. I know like some people are able to take like a whole year off and do little internships here and there. I feel like when you're an international student, that's a little bit more difficult because if you're trying to do it here in multiple places, you have to do it through the PY office. There's just a whole lot of like, at least personally for me, there's a lot of reason I need to stay here so I can like get my like a permanent residency afterwards. I think also a lot of domestic students might have a lot more connections. So say their parents work in a certain business or, you know, they have connections there. My parents have no connections to Canada or really any industry, so I couldn't really leverage that. I'd say it's a little bit tougher to be an international student, but you kind of get over it. I would like to see more international support, like more international students helping each other that are similar. I would like to see more of that.
What do you think that could look like?
Well, I kind of like at one point like dreamed of starting my own international student club for like school, like something less focused on where you came from and more of just like, hey, here's like students talking to each other about being international students together. Particularly because there are some international students who are like, I grew up in this one country and like I have a scholarship program to come to Canada to study and then I'm going to go back. There's definitely those types of international students. I'm not one of them. There's a lot of there's some international students peppered around the programs of like, I went to an international high school. I identify as like a third culture kid and kind of like nationally agnostic in a sense. Like you're not
I'm like
quite
a child
sure.
of the earth, you know?
Yeah, I'm like a citizen of the planet. Like, come on. Like, there's definitely those people who feel like they're not sure where they kind of belong, but they do. It's good to help each other because there were a lot of like little things you don't know as an international student, like how do you do your taxes? And I would like to say that the Center for International Experience can help you with that, but it's one thing for like a student service to help you. It's another thing to have like someone else who is like you who can help you and give you advice. Right.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be like a very, very valuable resource. Yeah. Were there, like you mentioned that one of the things that you like realized was that relationships are very important to you over the course of PY. Were there any other interests that you felt like you were more able to pursue when you were working?
Oh yeah. So I got to read. Oh my gosh, I got to read books. The thing I tried not to do all through my like middle school and high school, but now I think is such a luxury is like reading books or like listening to podcasts. Right. Paying premium Audible subscription fees so that you can listen to more things like that. I also got to buy clothes for myself. Oh, I love clothes. I also got a motorcycle.
Okay, pause. Was that something that was on your mind beforehand?
Yeah, so I always say that like I was really frustrated because I had just like submitted all my like the 7 billion final projects I had in second semester of third year, and then I had to go study for exams. So I went to bed Friday night going like, I wonder what the fatality rates are for motorcycles in Ontario.
And then forensic engineering mind.
I was like thinking, what are my odds of surviving if I was on a motorcycle? So I looked it up, and then I woke up Saturday morning. I'm like, that's okay. I should get it. No, I need to get a motorcycle.
Okay. Did you have your license?
No.
Okay. Did you get the license first or the motorcycle first?
I mean, I got the license first.
Okay. What is that process like?
So the same week I decided that, I went and took the M1 test, which is like a written test. It's like the G1 test. It's the same thing. It's literally like they take the G1 test, like they take some of it, and they put like a pamphlet, they slide in, and you're like, here's your additional motorcycle questions. And it's things like, what side of the lane do you ride on? And like, what do you do when this happens? And like...
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So you went and did that?
I went and did that. And the thing about that is that once you do that, it kind of triggers like a 90-day period. You have to get your M2 within 90 days.
Wow, that is very different from the G1.
Yeah, it is very different. It's also a little crazy because most people who get a motorcycle license do it after they have their like full G license, right?
Sure.
I'm not that, right? I don't even have I'm on a G1 right now, buddy. Like,
yeah. Do you know how to drive?
Like, I've been taking lessons. I'm trying to actually take my G2 test next week.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Best of luck.
So what you do for motorcycles is that you sign up for like a weekend course, and it's like a closed course. Like, it's just an empty parking lot. They make you ride around cones. Like, I had never even been on a motorcycle before I decided to do this.
Wow.
So I got my gear, because you gotta be safe. Like, everyone, please ride with gear. So I got my gear. I showed up. Everyone's really happy to be there. It's really great because you're surrounded with people who are really enthusiastic about like putting their lives in danger. So I get there. Everyone's like so cool. Like, the people who are teaching are really cool as well. Right. And then they're like, here's a bike, and then they're like, push it. And then by the end of the day, you're like riding it, and you're like, you switch gears. It's manual, by the way. Like, you don't, it's none of this automatic stuff. You got to change gears and stuff. Okay. And then you got to lean, and then it's all that. And then come back the next day, do some more of that. And then you do a test, and that's it. You're free to ride on the highways any day of the time, like any time of the day, like no problem.
So after the M1, start to finish, how long is that process? Like
60 to 90 days.
Okay.
Right. So what scared me was that, like, once I had my M2 and once I bought a motorcycle, I had actually never like ridden on the roads, like even in a car. So it was quite scary.
What was that first time like?
Well, I insisted that the person I purchased the motorcycle from would ride it to my house because I was really scared that I would not be able to ride it from their house to mine. Uh-huh. So I got them to deliver it. And once they delivered it, luckily I had a friend there because I nearly dropped it. Like, the first thing, if you're a newbie rider, like the first thing you do is drop your motorcycle. Like, that's on the checklist.
What do you like, drop your motorcycle? Like,
so,
it falls over?
It falls over. Uh-huh. It's like the saddest thing ever. It's like you have this beautiful piece of machinery and then...
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now it's a doorstop.
Yeah. Now it's a less valuable piece of machinery. Anyway, yeah. So it's very scary, but it was really a challenge for me because I was like done. I was so done. I was done with third year school. I was done with not seeing my life sort of be this fantastic thing I wanted it to be. I was like, you know what? Let me do something for me. Right. And I was so happy I did it because when you ride a motorcycle, you really do need to take a leap of faith that you can rely on yourself, right? You can control this vehicle. You can only focus on it. You can't be thinking about anything else. Otherwise, you crash,
sure.
Right? You gotta be responsible. You also, when you're doing motorcycling, like, you meet a lot of different people, which I always like. So you meet all sorts of different people that ride. You meet old people, young people. There's a fellow engineering student who was there, but he was like a graduate or something. Sure. I met someone who like sold stuff from Alibaba. Like, he would buy like wholesale and sell it, and that was his life. You meet all sorts of new people, and I still really love it. I wish I could ride more during school time, especially like I wish I didn't have to put it away for the winter. Right. But I'm really glad I did it. My dad is super jealous.
When you were describing just now the experience of having a motorcycle, you could have substituted in having a kid, and there would have been no difference functionally.
If I have a kid, I think I'm going to have to choose.
Choose between the two?
Yeah.
Motorcycle sounds fun, all I'm saying. That's a really cool thing you pursued. I'm like looking at you with coolest person I know eyes right now. So you having to put the motorcycle away for school, like, you came back to school in September. What was that like? Not too bad. Okay.
I thought it was going to be worse. I only felt, I only had minor panic attacks. I'm not going to say that. I thought it would be worse, but luckily I chose a very relaxed schedule, I feel. Sure. I didn't try to push myself too much like I had done in third year. Mm-hmm. I had a couple of moments where I was like, I'm going to go buy some nice clothes for myself because I'm really sad I'm not going to work 9 to 5. Uh-huh. There's some moments of that, but then there's also moments of like, hey, I have no responsibilities. There's nothing to do right now. I can just chill on a couch and read. So there were moments of that too. Okay,
gotcha. Do you think your approach to school is like more positive now that you've had like a year away? Or like, how has it changed?
I think it's more I wouldn't say more I'm still a little bit overly cynical, I feel, about school.
Sure.
People might think like, oh, you're too cynical about this. Like, school's great. Like, it's so good for society and stuff like that. I'm not too sure. I'm not too convinced still.
Sure.
In terms of positive outlook on school, I see it more as like a means to an end now. I see it having its place for some people. It's just not really the place for me, I don't think. I think if I came back for grad school, I would do it under completely different terms. Like, I don't think I'd pursue like a master's degree now. I think I want to go work first. Yeah.
Do you think you want to go work on medical devices?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm really glad I had that experience because I realized that there are a lot of things that I'm good at that I can, like, if you can imagine, if you like play an RPG, right? Role-playing game, people who play video games, you understand, right? You make a character and you have various sliders, okay? Or like in The Sims, you can up your charisma points and stuff like that. Okay, my sliders for technical expertise in materials engineering is not too high, okay? It's like better than average, but it's not fantastic, okay? So I'm not going to be pursuing like a master's degree in it. But luckily, I have other sliders, okay? I have some sliders in, say, quality engineering or auditing or even just talking to people and trying to get people to work together, which is so essential in industry. You can apply those skills in different places. Your title doesn't have to be engineer. And you can still find valuable, impactful work. For medical devices, you're quite actually saving lives.
Right.
If you can make a medical device that is going to be safe and reliable, that's much better than a medical device that's unsafe, unreliable, and could cause harm to a patient.
Right.
So yeah, I'm really excited to either go back to medical devices or something similar, or even just like business in general.
Yeah, it sounds like work life is something that makes you like happier than school life.
Oh yeah, so much happier.
Do you think you'll be staying in Canada?
Yeah, I gotta set up the Dixon like home base, I think.
Right.
I'm trying to make a North American headquarters.
Right, and you've already got the motorcycle, which is definitely commitment to the land.
No, I definitely want to stay in Canada. I think culturally, I am more aligned with Canadian culture than any other culture out there. I'm, for those who don't know, like I speak with an American or Canadian accent. I'm not Canadian American. I'm actually British. But I think because I went to an American high school and I have like a British dad, somewhere in the middle you kind of find Canadian culture or at least something similar. I really like Canada. I love its diversity. I never feel like growing up in Oman in like the Middle East, like people would always look at me because I look different than most people there.
Sure.
I love Canadian culture. I love how at home I feel here, and I'm really excited to stay here.
What advice would you give somebody who is currently looking for a PUI or is on PUI?
Follow your gut. Your gut knows a lot. At least, I don't know about some people. Some people like to have like a decision matrix of things. I'd say follow your gut. Don't be afraid to try new things and push yourself out of your comfort zone. When you're in university, you're on PUI, you're looking for a PUI, there's not too much opportunity cost, I feel, to try new things. And it's a good time to try new things. Think about what you're good at and what might interest you and try to just follow that. But also don't beat yourself up if you're not like measuring up to other people, because the way you're going to pursue life is going to be at your pace and your way. So don't feel bad if you're like not taking like 12 internships or like, doing it at like all the various tech companies that everyone knows. Find what interests you and what makes you happy.
Oh, that's awesome. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
You covered a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to like talk more, I'm always happy to talk more about it.
Where can people find you to talk more?
Oh gosh. Okay. My name is Jennifer Dixon. So JENNIFER.DIXON at mail.utoronto.ca. So just email me. Put in like the little thing, like the subject, like podcast, so like I don't ignore your email. Yeah, pretty much that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Jen, thank you for being on. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for being the coolest person I know. just officially as of this conversation.
Oh my gosh, so blessed.
It is, high ranking, but you ride a motorcycle.
Can I show you my BTS crack videos now?
You can show me your BTS crack videos. This is something that was discussed before the taping of this podcast. I think I've got a whole new world to explore. Hashtag Army, hashtag BTS. All right, this has been That Thing I Did for a Year. We'll see you next time.
Hey there, this is Arkady. I just want to say a big thank you to you for listening to another episode of That Thing I Did for a Year. And thank you especially for listening all the way through till the end. So if you enjoyed the show, we would really appreciate it if you were to tell a friend or like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to us on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you know somebody who you would like to hear on the show, or if you yourself think you'd be good to have on the show, definitely reach out to us on social media. And that's all. We'll see you next Monday with another episode. Until then, have a great week. Bye.